Welcome back to the Stay Busy Boxing YouTube channel. I'm Cameron, and today we're talking about the most important punch in the sport of boxing, which is the jab. Now, the reason the jab is such an important punch is because you use it to set up everything else you're going to do in the ring. I watched back my last 5 days of sparring, and I actually found out that 73% of my punches were all the jab. And the reason I bring this number up is because all of those were not punches meant to land. A lot of them were used to find my distance, find my range. A lot of them were to either move me in close or get me away from someone moving towards me. Sometimes I throw them out there just to make enough space and time that I can catch my breath, right? After a nice short range exchange, sometimes just throwing a double jab and moving away is enough to get you enough time to regain your breathing, regain your mental, and just be ready for what happens next. And this is no secret to fighters and coaches everywhere. In any combat sport, the jab is key. On the next sparring night in your gym, I want you just to listen and try to count how many times you hear your coach yell to use your jab or double it up, and it's gonna be a lot. Now, there is a whole lot of ways to throw your jab, really a million. Everyone's jab is going to be tailored to their style and the way they like to fight. But when we're learning the jab, I like to think of 3 fundamental different types of jabs to learn, which will help you evolve into your own jab eventually. This first type of jab, which I recommend everyone learn first, is the throwaway jab. It is not made to sting anybody, it is not made to tag anybody, it is just there to get you moving your arm, whether it's to measure distance, to close some space, to buy yourself just a moment to breathe. The throwaway jab is what you're always going to use for these reasons. Throwing the throwaway jab is very easy, and this is where I want you to take the time to find your technique on your jab. It's going to be really simple. You're not punching. We're going to get in our stance, we're pushing and pulling back to our guard, pushing and pulling back to our guard. Notice at a point I turn over my wrist. The reason we need to do that is because if you there's no power there. Even though your throwaway jab isn't meant to land, sometimes it's gonna have to. And the way we make sure that it's useful is that it's not limp, it's not soft. It's loose but tight. Loose and tight. Notice at the end I'm clenching my fist. You don't until the end. It's right when you turn it over fully. And that's how you make sure it's nice and solid. So even if I'm throwing a throwaway jab and someone steps in, it'll still be strong enough and powerful enough to stop their maneuver and make it still a more useful movement than just throwing it out there. Now, even though the throwaway jab is the most basic form of jabbing, I want you to use your brain to make the most out of it. And we're going to do that by basically learning our distances. The nice thing about your jab is it's tailored to you, and you need to learn exactly how far it goes. It's a tape measure using your body essentially. So when you're learning this, feel free to go up to a bag. Do not punch it hard, right? Especially not wrapped, not gloved up. We don't want to do that. But you're just going to push it out there and find your range, right? And like I said, this is the time to hone in on your technique. Worry about turning your punches over. Worry about tightening at the right time. A lot of guys think just because they're working really hard and using a lot of energy means they're training well. That's not the case at all. So another thing we're going to do during this time is talk about some common mistakes I see when people are building their jab. And you want to make sure you do not do these out of the gate, because it is much harder to break a bad habit than pick up a new one. So we're going to start while we're picking up our jab and making sure everything is perfect. The first common mistake I see guys make when developing their jab is that when they start to get tired, their form just breaks down. And it typically starts with the elbow flaring out. Notice, when I throw it like that, before the punch even starts, my elbow's out here. And the reason this is so bad, there's actually multiple reasons. The first one is that I can see your punch coming. It's gonna be really easy for me just to counter off that. The other reason is you're taking all the power out of your jab, all the snap out of your jab. We know the fastest way between point A and point B is a straight line. So with a normal jab, it's there, it's back. But as soon as we flare our elbow out, it takes it offline a bit. It's slower, it's less solid, and it's kind of a waste of a punch if you ask me. And a wonderful drill we can do to counteract this is not give us a chance for our elbow to flare out. So find a wall. I'm going to use the bag right here, whatever you can. But if you work on this jab, just up against it. Put your elbow against it. it's literally impossible to flare your elbow out. There's nowhere for it to go. This is a great little drill to help you really get in the habit of always bringing your jab back to your guard in the perfect position. That brings us into our second mistake I see a lot of guys develop when they're working on their jab, which is not bringing their hand back to their guard. You need to always bring your hand back to your guard every time. And I know when you first start sparring, you might be able to get away with keeping it a little low, especially if your coach has you just jab sparring with somebody. But you don't want to make that a habit, because as soon as you work with somebody that's halfway decent, you throw that jab out, they're just gonna parry and throw the two over top every time. And that's just the most basic counter to a lazy jab that does not go back to its guard. The last mistake I see guys make, again, when they get tired, the more tired you are, the more likely you are to lose your technique and lose your form, is when they're reaching. Especially shorter guys that are trying to break distance and reach someone, what they tend to do is when they throw that jab out, they let their right hand come off. And what's that gonna do? That's gonna open you up to a lead hook that will be devastating if it catches you. An undefended lead hook is most guys' knockout punch. And the last thing we need to have happen is you take one of those nice and early into a fight. So once you have all that down and you can throw that throwaway jab while shadow boxing, while moving your feet a million times, perfect technique without breaking, then we're gonna worry about moving on to the second type of jab, which I'm gonna call the snap jab. The snap jab is going to be most boxers' bread and butter. It's basically the same exact technique as a throwaway jab, but we're going to throw it about 75–80% power. And this is important for multiple reasons. This is the jab that you're going to use to set up your combos. This is the jab you're going to use to break distance. This is the jab that you're going to start incorporating your feet. Now, it's not a step jab. A step jab is more of our third type of jab, which I'm going to call a push jab. But we still need to make sure that we're on our toes, and when you throw your snap jab, you're pushing onto the ball of your front foot, because it makes sure your weight stays there so you can move, you can take a step, maneuver into the next part of your combo or defensive movement, whichever it may be. To know you're throwing a snap jab right is you will see it snap. So we can work that on the bag. It's pretty simple. There's a wonderful clip of Floyd Mayweather out there from a couple years ago of him just throwing snap jab, snap jab, snap jab, and it's a perfect example of what you want out of it. You're gonna approach the bag, find your distance, notice the bag isn't really moving, right? Because I'm snapping my punch off it. If I was throwing it and it was moving the bag, notice I can't pull it back, because that's a power punch, not a snap jab. A snap jab is with the idea that you will be throwing more punches off of it, right? So if I snap jab, I could throw a 1-2. If I throw one of those heavier ones, it's just not right. It takes too much to pull back to your guard and throw your second punch properly. The last jab I want to talk about today is the step jab, or the push jab, and it's exactly what I was doing at the end of the last clip. It's all about when you use it. It is a nice, hard jab, very stiff, that most of the time you're going to move your feet with, and it's going to be, you don't really want to open up with it too much. It's more of the last punch of your combo, or maybe use it defensively if someone's really pushing you, right? So you can team it up with the snap jab to go high, low. So let's just say if we snap jab high, right? Then we're gonna step jab low to the body. If you notice the way I'm stepping that foot, it's almost like I'm using my back foot to push and my front foot to stop. And I'm landing with that weight still on the ball of my front foot like a snap jab, because we know that is a position we can continue to move from. But the other time to use it would be, let's say there's a guy trying to close distance on me, right? And I'm just trying to keep him away. Need some time to regroup, to rethink, to breathe. I might just be waiting for that moment for him to come in, and and it's just nice and stiff, aimed at his chest. So it's really hard for him to continue moving closer to me. It's all about the selection of when you throw these punches is what's gonna make them deadly. Now that we have our first couple types of jabs in our mind, we've worked them all, I have some specific drills that are really gonna be helpful for getting you used to throwing these punches in a couple different positions and how to stay ready to work off of them. So the first drill is the in and out drill. You can really work with any of those jabs, but I like to work on my snap jab because it's the one I throw the most. It's very simple. We're just gonna get in our guard, punch and back, punch and back, punch and back. Notice my hand is reaching its furthest point when my foot hits the ground. We need to have our feet in our hands in sync at all times. And the reason this is such a great drill is because it's really easy to build off of. Once we know we can step forward and jab, we can slip and throw a body shot, right? Or we can do a pullback counter while throwing the jab, hoping it's gonna break distance, or as they break distance, it's gonna break their rhythm, and then we're set up nice and loaded to throw the two, and we're nice and safe. But it's all about making sure your hands and feet are on the same exact plane. Now the second drill is going to be working on your double jab, and you need to be conscious about implementing all these kind of jabs in your double jab. And this is also a good time to start understanding how to use your throwaway jab as a feint, right? So for my first double jab, nice and easy, 2 snap jabs, okay? But maybe you have to break a little distance. So you can do a throwaway jab with a little step and then a snap jab. Or maybe you want to go high-low. You might do a snap jab up high, a step jab down low to the chest. And we're always back in our guard, ready to defend and ready to throw again. And that's the point. All these drills, we're just gonna set a 3-minute timer, a full round, and we're just gonna work with them. Play with it, have fun. The jab is all about getting into that flow and just finding when you can throw it effectively, that feels good, it feels safe, and you can work off it. The best way to figure that out is just to throw it. Throw it as many times as you can. So this last drill is going to be almost shadow boxing, not quite all the way, but what we're going to do is every punch we throw, we're going to then do a defensive movement to stop that same punch, right? I hate when I see guys go spar for the first time because it's almost always jab only, and they throw a punch or they throw a double jab and they wait. When you're waiting, you're not dictating the pace of the fight, you're not dictating what's going on right then or next. So when you're throwing a single jab at somebody, a lot of the time you're fighting for position, fighting for the spot to build on top of it. So what I like to do, and I do this shadow boxing in general, is when I throw a punch or a combo, I'm gonna do a defensive movement that will mimic exactly what I just threw. So if I just threw a jab, I'm gonna catch, I'm gonna parry, right? Or maybe punch slip, right? Whatever it is that you throw, try to do a defensive movement to counteract that exact same thing. And eventually when you get onto full-on shadow boxing, it'll be much more seamless to incorporate your defense and your head movement along with your punching. The last thing I really want to talk about with the jab is that you need to throw it all the time. And you'll get to a point where you understand how hard you're throwing and you'll be able to throw a couple thousand jabs a day without getting tired. And that's the goal. The more you can work that jab and the more you can throw it, the more you can dictate everything that's going on around you. So I suggest every time you walk by a mirror, throw a jab and then do a defensive movement. If you're waiting for an elevator, just throw your jab. If you're walking down the street, just throw a jab. But the most important thing is you keep throwing it. Your jab needs to be so sharp and it's always going to be evolving. So if you sit on it, it's going to get worse. Even if you're just walking around throwing it out, it'll be sharper, it'll be less work to continue to throw it. And the more you can throw it, the more success you're gonna have. So please always be conscious about throwing that jab. There has never been a world-class fighter that didn't have a world-class jab. And I know a lot of guys that win a lot of amateur fights and have a lot of success sparring with just a really good jab. If you have only time to work on one thing in the gym, I would say it's your jab as far as punching goes. Otherwise, footwork's pretty much always king, right? But if you only have limited time or limited space, working on your jab is almost always your best route to go. And with that said, that is going to wrap up our video all about the jab. If you learned something, please leave a comment. I want to know what it was that helped you improve. Leave a like if you really enjoyed the video, and sub if you're excited for some more we have coming out soon. I have a bunch of ideas in my head. My main issue right now is trying to find the time to film them and talk about them while still training by myself. So the gap between them might grow a little bit, but I promise we're still working on them. So with all that said, please enjoy the rest of your day, stay safe until next time, and don't forget to stay busy.